Are you thinking about leasing a commercial premises? Then, if you are, there are, well, certainly more than 10 things you need to consider. But in this video, I'm going to give you 10 questions you need to ask yourself if you're taking on a commercial premises. Number one, what is the term of the lease? In other words, is it for example, 10 years or 20 years or less than 5 years? This will have a significant impact on your entitlement, statutory entitlement to get a new lease at the end of your term. If, for example, you have a short lease for less than 5 years, then you won't have a statutory entitlement to a new lease. Number two, who's responsible for repairs? If the lease is for less than 5 years, the likelihood is you'll be only responsible for internal repairs. However, if it's for longer than 5 years, then you may well be responsible for both internal and external repairs, but you need to consider this. Number three, you need to consider the position in relation to insurance. You probably almost certainly would have to make a contribution to the landlord's insurance of the building. However, how much insurance or how much of a contribution you have to pay will depend on whether you're the sole occupier of the building or whether it's a multi-tenant building. Number four relates to alterations. Will you need to make alterations in order to make the premises fit for your particular purpose? If so, will they be of such significance that you're going to need the landlord's consent? Is there a provision in the lease for a consent from the landlord to make alteration? The fifth thing you need to consider is alienation of the premises. Alienation basically means your entitlement to assign or transfer the lease to somebody else, or indeed to sublet it. Ordinarily, you will need the landlord's consent to do so, but you just better make sure that the lease does make provision for alienation and doesn't prohibit it entirely. The sixth thing you need to consider is service charges. Are service charges payable? How are they calculated? And are they excessive? Have you budgeted for service charges if indeed there are service charges to be paid by each tenant or by you? The seventh thing you need to consider is an important one. It's rent reviews. How often are rent reviews? Typically every 5 years, but you need also to look at the lease just to be sure what is the provision or position in relation to disagreement in relation to the increased rent, which inevitably will occur. The eighth thing you need to consider is guarantee. Are you, as an individual, obliged to guarantee the rent of your business? Your business may be a partnership or it may be a limited company, but you're not going to have the protection of limited liability if you indeed have to give a personal guarantee to the landlord in respect of the rent. Number 9, is there a break clause in the contract or in the lease? Typically, you'll be looking for a break clause after 1 year or perhaps 3 years, just depending on your business. You mightn't be sure how it's going to go, or indeed you may outgrow your premises pretty quickly if your growth is pretty quick, and you might need a break clause to provide for that. The 10th thing you need to consider is the tax position. What is the story in relation to VAT? Is the landlord charging VAT on the rent? He's probably or almost certainly entitled to do so. Well, he can elect to do so. You need to be clear, though, in your budgeting whether he's going to charge VAT or not, and whether the figure that you've negotiated is including or excluding VAT, and also what is the position in relation to stamp duty. These are just 10 things that you should consider yourself before you take on a lease. You also then need to engage a solicitor to get legal advice in relation to other issues, for example, planning, the landlord's entitlement or title to grant a lease, and so on.